Okay, how attitude affects performance, meaning as a runner, how attitude affects how fast you're gonna get and how far you're gonna get in this sport. Whether you're training for 5K, 10K, or whether you're training for marathon, ultramarathon, attitude is everything. And I always talk about work ethic, about discipline, consistency. Attitude is well up there when it comes to the traits that it takes in order for you to go far in this sport. Now, I'm going to talk to you about a real life example and why I think it serves to be the perfect example to really look under the bonnet of how different personalities operate, what their starting points were, and how far they got. And I'll give you specific examples of runners, of athletes, and why I think this is a perfect example. Now, I was invited to be the athletics coach for international school. And I remember thinking, what a privilege and what an opportunity. And growing up in Manchester, it was really easy to get into trouble. If you went 2 streets the wrong way, you were in with the wrong crowd. But for me, sport was always my anchor. Whether it was football, rugby, cricket, badminton, table tennis, athletics, track and field, cross country, I didn't have the time after all that sport to get into trouble. So it served not only to keep me with the right people and with sort of positive influences and under the guidance of positive, influential sort of teachers, but it also taught me, I think it's so powerful this as well, it taught me all the lessons that are really crucial to learn in your early development years that you take on to life. And I've noticed that with all the friends that I did sport with at school, that teamwork, discipline, work ethic, delayed gratification, learning to fail, all those things, these kids have got it down and are now sort of being successful in life. Those things are crucial for me to get right. And so that was the sort of, I felt a level of accountability. If I'm walking into this situation, then I'm gonna do it right. And so the way that I figured that I'm gonna do that without the experience of coaching kids before was I'm just gonna be my sports teacher. And the sports teacher I looked up to the most was Andy Trigg, a guy that had held and still holds to this day lots of long distance trail races, holds the course records for lots of long distance trail races and won major races and didn't even mention it at the time. We only found out about this later. But in every fiber of his being, you had to look up to him because he was physically in incredible shape. He was a great runner, but he was great at football and he was great at rugby. He just commanded respect without having to say anything. And of all the teachers I had at my school, he was number one by far. And so he was disciplined and he expected a lot of you. So, you know, if you were doing 8 times 400 meters and you didn't hit the times, you'd have to do them until you hit your times. And maybe that is or isn't the right way to go about things. We now know differently, but it instilled a level of work ethic in you, which was much more important at those ages than, you know, getting the training right, for example. So I walked into that situation just thinking, I'm going to be Andy Trigg. What I found was times have changed, of course. And so I couldn't speak to the children in the way that I was spoken to as a kid. Whether that's right or wrong, I don't know. And it's, you know, it's another video. But I also had to sort of speak to an age range of 8 to 19 years old because it was an international school. It was relatively small, 500-600 kids. And so around about 30 kids and 8 to 19 years old, which is difficult to deal with anyway, but it means you're kind of speaking to the 12, 13-year-olds because that's the biggest group, and you're hoping everybody else sort of gets on board. And then you need to deal with everybody individually. And this was where, for me, it got really interesting. What I noticed after 1-2 lessons is I got to see everybody's starting point. We did some tests, we did some time trials, and we got sort of time. I was timing people to see where they were at, and then we'd see where they got to during the season. What I noticed was you're dealing with motivated and unmotivated kids, and you're also dealing with physically fit kids and unfit kids. And so I put them into 4 categories: motivated and physically fit, unmotivated but physically fit, motivated but unfit, and demotivated and unfit. And here's what I found. You're always going to get those kids, like me and my friends when we were young, we would kill each other on a badminton court or a table tennis table, trying to win and trying to be the best possible table tennis player we could be. And that healthy competition raised all of our games in a very, very healthy way. And that ultra competitive nature was brilliant and definitely nurtured at the time. Kids were exactly the same. And so with a little bit of guidance, they went from being a small school that was placing sometimes to a small school that was absolutely dominated. And those are your superstars. They need probably the least of your attention, but want most of it. The second kids who are unmotivated, but are physically fit, usually, and from my examples in this class, they were footballers or basketballers that are trying to come across, or their dad had sent them and their dad had made them come, and they didn't really want to be there, but they knew that they should in order to build fitness to get better at football or basketball. All what they needed was a different approach. So they needed to make running fun and make it specific to their sport. That was quite easy to deal with as well. And because they were from a sporting background, they understood teamwork. They understood work ethic and the discipline that it took, and it wasn't going to happen overnight, but it did happen at that age for them in football and basketball. They were naturally very good because they played it from such a young age. So it was just sort of implementing that into finding running a little bit later, 10, 11, 12, 13 years old, and then trying to nurture that. For me, where it got incredibly fascinating was the unfit people. And I'm not going to name names because they may be watching these videos, but I remember 4 examples so well, and I'll come on to why I remember it so well in a second. But there was 2 kids that were unfit but motivated. And by motivated, with these 2 kids, they decided that they would come into running club. And they came to running club, they did every single session, they wanted to be on the athletics team, and they ticked off every single session, and they came twice a week and did the sessions and did the homework as well, did the other sessions. And the starting point was unbelievably low. Like the first session that we did, they were not able to run the short end of a football pitch. That was the starting point. And because of their dedication and them ticking off the weeks, the sessions, and doing the homework, I could tell they were doing the homework as well. They're coming back reporting, and they were academically very good as well, these 2 kids. So they were good at school. They understood what it was like to put a project together, what it was like to study towards something and then get it. And they decided that if they were going to join running club, they were going to make it happen. Simple as that. And then I had another 2 girls who were like 14, 15 years old. They were unfit, and it was very, very difficult for them. And I remember them, not being able to run the small side of the football pitch. And so we literally broke it down into 10 seconds, and we'd run 10 seconds at a time. I'd run with them, and then we'd get our breath back, and then we'd go again, and we tried to do that, and it was too hot, and the knee was hurting, and all these excuses that you get, but you know that the progress curve is going to be really big, because if this is new to you and sport is new to them, they had no previous sporting background, then the gains are going to be really big so long as you stick at it. But of course, lo and behold, they didn't turn up for the second session. And so I got back from that session, I thought those 2 kids that I could really work with, in order to get better. And the parent of one of the children emailed me and explained why her daughter wasn't coming. There was no real explanation. It was just like, she's not going to be there and she's not coming to future lessons. And I emailed back and just said, listen, she's right at the start. It's very difficult for her, but with a little bit of work, whole life is going to improve. Like study is going to improve, productivity is going to improve, creativity, everything is going to improve. The mentality, but also the physical aspects are going to improve. And I received a really strongly worded email back. And I wanted to reply to it, but in the end, it was just, the penny dropped for me. And I realized that, of course, because that is the standard of that household. That is the standard that those parents have on their children. And so when I'm driving down the road and I see an overweight kid with their overweight parent walking into McDonald's, for a little while when you're growing up and you're seeing that stuff, you're like, wow, mind blown, how does that? Now it's not even shocking, because why would they break that chain if they don't know how to break that chain? And if they don't break that chain, why would they even go and figure out how that chain is broken? And it was exactly the same for these girls. My proudest moment was those 2 that were unfit but motivated were by far what I'm most proud of. They were not able to run the short length of a football field, And in the final cross-country race, which was 5 kilometers for one of the kids and further for the other, the first boy was about 15, 16 years old. And he finished and ran the hills, ran the downhills, sweating profusely, didn't have the right kit, etc., cotton t-shirt, but just made it happen because he'd signed up and it was happening. And he finished, and he might have finished last, but it didn't matter. It was such a big success story. And success is the distance from where you started to where you get. So although there were kids that had done brilliant and the superstars with the right guidance, they were all of a sudden winning all the races, even for a small school, they were dominating. They were not as big as success stories as that lad who had made it happen and finished. And the other girl, despite her just being in the mentality of, I'm super slow, but I'm just gonna make it happen, I'm just gonna get to the finish line. She made it happen, she got to the finish line. She ran the longest distance because she was 18, and she got to the finish line. So why am I talking about this? When you're dealing with kids, it's literally a microscope or magnifying glass for what people are really like. And when I was a kid, I remember thinking, when you grow up, you become an adult. It's not true. When you grow up, you may be older, but you don't necessarily become an adult. You don't take accountability and responsibility. You don't go at things just because you've got years. Years doesn't mean experience. It's what you do with your years. And so what you get is, like I'll receive in these comments, this time is not possible for me because you can try to persuade me why you will never be fast enough. But I'm only going to listen once. And after that, I'm not interested. Because if you want to persuade me why you cannot do something, I'm not going to listen to that. You've already persuaded yourself and you are absolutely convinced. So why would I not spend time with the other comments or with the other athletes or with the other children? Why would I not do that? Is that not a better time spent? Why should I move at the slowest person's pace? Why would I ever do that? Because in this, whatever the landscape we want to talk about, the world we've seen in the Olympics right now, whatever this world is, I'm in my world. And this is what counts to me. I will affect as many people as possible for me in the right way, and I will affect my own life. And the better I am as an individual, both physically, mentally, spiritually, the better I am for everybody around me, my family, everybody who I love around me, but also those people I coach. So why would I ever spend time on people who are trying to convince me that they're never going to achieve what I think they're capable of? They're trying to convince me that I'm wrong about what they're mind-blowing. But again, I feel that working with children is a perfect example, perfect sample study. Tell me, what do you think? Do you think it is? Do you think you see these characters around you? Do you see these different personalities, whether it's in running or whatever you do in life? Do you see that? And what's your experience? Let me know in the comments below.